Jeff, you've obviously taken your 35 years of ministry and the guidance that you just gave us, and you are called to do more. Your kiddos are out of the house, they're successful, they're doing what they need to do, and you're looking back on these things and you're looking at dads like me, and you're saying, listen, we have a plan. I have a plan for everything. I'm in Scottsdale right now on business, but I had a plan to get here. I have a
Right.
plan for the trip that we're taking. If we have our future Christmas list that we're going to do, we got a plan for everything, right? But we don't have a plan to be a dad. We don't make a plan for how we're going to do things on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. So you created the Dad Academy. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So, um, Dad Academy started in 2015, actually. Started with a group of men in my church, a couple guys who were young dads, and well, there might be some training available for fatherhood as it relates to navigating the newborn or toddler years that are just kind of like an orientation, right? Here's what to expect. In fact, I still remember buying books when my wife was pregnant with our first one. What to expect when you're expecting, right? And there's some little helpful tools that go along with it, but I don't think men understand that really their job is pretty simple. The mission of a dad is to pass on his values and his skills to his children. So the first step that has to happen is we've got to be clear about what our values are. And I've done a lot of consulting for businesses. I've done a lot of consulting for organizations. And when they're wondering why um, their outcomes are not aligned with their strategy, it's usually because there's a misalignment of values. They say that this is important while they measure something else, right? And so a dad has got to understand what his values are, and our values are not what we want to be. Our values are what we do, right? They are our behavior that is set in a belief system about what's most important. And so, one of the first things that we do in Dad Academy is help guys kind of drill down to really what is important. For example, was in a Dad Academy cohort and had a grandfather who was there and had been very successful throughout his life, was a man of some independent wealth means. And I was asking him, what he really wanted his legacy to be, like one of the things that he wanted to do. And he said, he has two daughters. They're both married, both have young families. He says, I really want to leave $1 million to each of my kids' families. And I looked at him, I'm like, why on earth would you want to ruin their life like that? Because, like, we know what happened. Like, part of the learning curve and learning how to struggle and learning how to make decisions has to do with the way that we manage our money. And if you take away all those constraints, it doesn't really produce any life. In fact, it starts to become an excuse for doing the things that you want to do instead of the things that you need to do. So I looked him right in the eye. I said, why would you, what really do you want? What is it that you really want for your kids? It can't just be financial security, right? What is it? There's got to be something more that you want for them than that. And he paused for a minute and he said, I really want them to be able to do whatever God asks them to do without the fear of resources being the thing that holds them back.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to live their lives, to be generous with their lives. Now, the shift of value from financial security to radical generosity is a whole different way of defining one's life, right? So we help guys kind of dig down a little bit, right? There's a lot of people who say, man, I want hard work. Hard work is a value. Well, why is it a value? Are you still trying to prove to your dad that you're worth something so you make unrealistic demands from your children? Or are you trying to say, no, perseverance and faithfulness is something that marks our family and that will serve you well throughout your life. That's different from working hard to kind of gain somebody's attention and affection. Now, not all of our values are great. I mean, I have a story I share in the book of my own values. If we have time, uh, it was COVID, and my daughter had just graduated from college. Poor thing had to suffer through a COVID college graduation, which meant there was nothing. But she was at home, and I remember hearing her and my wife in the kitchen. I had the TV on, and I'm working on my computer. I'm a good multitasker, a typical male ADD, easily distracted. And I heard my wife and daughter talking about dinner that night, and my daughter said, we should really make some broccoli. And my wife said, "Oh, your dad hates broccoli." And I laughed. I do with my whole soul. I think broccoli is a curse on the earth. I kind of grew up because I grew up in an agricultural area. For summers to make money when I was a kid, I had to work harvesting broccoli. I ate the smell. I ate the texture. Like I just made a decision when I'm an adult, never gonna eat broccoli again. No big deal. Next day, a similar scenario. I hear the girls talking there in another room. And my wife was saying something. I didn't even catch what she said. And my daughter replied to her, said, "Yeah, that's not dad's kind of thing." Okay, well, okay. I just went about whatever I was doing. Next day, similar scenario. I can't tell you what time it was. I can't tell you. But again, they're having a conversation. And my daughter was talking to my wife. I don't even recall what it was about. And my wife said, "Yeah, your dad's not going to want to do that." And immediately in my heart, I heard a voice that said, "Dad wins." The value of the Hamilton home is that everybody adjusts their life around what dad likes and what dad wants. And I began to cry a little because I want my life to be about serving, and that I know what they like and what they value and what's important. And I didn't even realize that by default I had created an environment where they organize their lives around me. I was glad to identify that value existed so that I could begin to shift it. Right? So the value identification is an important part in a man's life because it helps to explain him to him. And so then we talk about the skills that a dad has. Everything you know how to do, somebody has taught you how to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think about it, but you're not far away from having to do the potty training days. Like, who'd have thought that you actually had to teach someone how to use the restroom? Right? Could you imagine your oldest still sitting in training pants? Right? That like it just makes no sense.
Right.
So everything that we know in life to do is a skill that's been learned. As toddlers, we teach them to say please and thank you, and to share, and to emotional and relational and practical skills are things that we have. I was just on a podcast with a guy who said, "I didn't have a dad. Nobody showed me how to tie a tie. Somebody had to show me how to shave." Whatever you know how to do, you need to make sure that your kids know how to do that as well. And so we help dads make a list of age-appropriate things of, what do you know how to do? And if you don't know how to do something, like I wasn't great about managing money, those were just not skills or discipline that I learned early on. So I made sure to have somebody in my life who was coaching me, who also would coach my kids so that they didn't go into life with that kind of deficit. And usually, often, as you talked about your group of guys, like Dad Academy really is meant to be a study that is used to create conversations around men so that they could begin to invest into each other's lives, into each other's children. And then those values begin to shape our choices and our decisions. They begin to shape the kind of things we're going to complement in our kids' lives. They're going to shape the things that we confront or discipline in our kids' lives, right? Um, we always said that we would confront because they were values that were opposite of what we wanted to be as a family. We confronted deceit. You don't lie in our family. You tell the truth. We don't put up with disrespect, whether it's to each other or to the parents. Every person is worthy of honor and respect. And we don't put up with dishonesty, with you just trying to cover your behind or trying to get out of things, right? That's not who we are. We take on responsibility. Those were the things that we would confront. Those were the things that we would discipline our children for. And remember, discipline's not a bad word. It comes from the word disciple. It's
Yeah.
really talking about a training tool. But we would complement things like sacrifice. We would complement loyalty and faithfulness. We would complement service. Whenever we saw them doing those things, those were the things that we rewarded. We wouldn't always reward like grades and report cards. And I mean, they were responsible to use the skills that God gave them to the best of their abilities. What we wanted to acknowledge was the kind of people that they were becoming. And so our values begin to shape the way that we build our home and then our culture. So the values help us to raise courageous kids who live from the heart, right? Courage comes from the word core, the Latin word core, which really means what's at the center of your life, right? And so our core values means this is how, at our heart, this is who we are. This is how we're gonna live. Competence comes from, or capability comes from passing on both emotional intelligence and experiential intelligence, practical skills and relational skills that are necessary to be successful in life that they learn from dad. And confidence comes from this sense of understanding who you are. And those come from the kind of rituals and traditions that are built up that make the Spack or the Hamilton family. It says this is kind of who we are. This is kind of what we do. These are the things that we prioritize in our life. So if a kid has the courage to be able to attack life, they have the skills to be able to navigate it, and they have a great sense of who they are, that they can approach life with confidence, we've already set them up for the best success, for the opportunity for them to be the most successful that they can be.
Got two last questions for you. Before we go there, Jeff Hamilton, how can people find you, sir?
Dadacademy.info is our website. We're pretty active on our socials as well. Instagram is dad.academy. Thankfully, Instagram is also integrated into Facebook. So Facebook, it's just Dad Academy. TikTok, Dad Academy. And starting here in about a month, we'll be doing a weekly discussion point on our YouTube channel, Dad Academy Online.
Fantastic.
All that information is online. There is an opportunity to where you can link it to buy the Dad Academy book. But for yourself, maybe the group of guys that you have, maybe a group of guys not only walk through the book together. We actually have a whole video masterclass that comes with a workbook. That essentially all we did was took the masterclass and turned it into a book. But the videos and the discussion that happens in a group of guys as they begin to share the journey together is probably what is the most, in my opinion, been the most valuable. We've seen it the most fruitful. It's just that not everybody nobody really knows how to kind of, I hate this word, but how to market a small group thing.
Yeah.
But we do know how to do a book. So the book hopefully directs people to that, because what we really want is exactly for men to experience what you have experienced. A relationship with significant men who help you to become the best you that God's designed you to be. And the Bible uses a term for that in Proverbs. It's called iron that sharpens iron. right? That as men begin to rub up against each other, as they begin to have discussions and conversations, navigate conflict and challenge each other, each of them becomes sharper. And so my hope is that in neighborhoods and in homes, we would have men who would continue to be understand not only should they father their families well, but if 40% of people grow up without a dad in their home, there's a lot of single mom little leaguers around
Yeah.
who are going to need a fathering, a mentoring presence in their life. And if men know how to father well in their own families, that's going to spill over into these other opportunities, whether you're caring for, involved in a group that's serving at church somewhere. In my situation, I'm a volunteer at a local high school with athletes. Whether you're mentoring other men, my dream would be that we would see the significance of fatherhood really begin to take hold again in our country. In fact, the Bible says the last book of the Old Testament. I think first things and last things are very important. Like the first thing that somebody says and the last thing that you leave them with is really important. And the last thing in the book of Malachi, in our English Western Bibles, it's the last book of the Old Testament. Malachi is a group of writings, kind of a letter that this man wrote to his friends, to the generation of the story that's told in the book of Nehemiah. It's the last historical event that we find in the Old Testament. And there's in the book of the story of Nehemiah is like so manly, right? You have a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other, and know who's got your back and have somebody else's back and fight for your family, and let's rebuild the city. Let's rebuild our lives. Like amazing, like best locker room conversations ever. Malachi speaks to those people and goes, but don't get lost in the work, because the thing to look for about the way that God's presence in God's kingdom is going to be manifest is, look for this. I'll turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. And then the last words of the Old Testament are very haunting, because he says, speaking on behalf of God, or I will strike the land with a curse. And fatherlessness is a curse throughout the world. It's the same in Mission Viejo, in Fort Collins, as it is in Nairobi, as it is in Cartagena, Colombia. Fatherhood and the lack of fathers is the same curse that's around the world. And I think it's because men begin to lose sight of their purpose.
Yeah.
Right? It's about the people that have been entrusted to you. And that's what I hope Dad Academy can be, a tool to help restore, not in our culture, but in the hearts of males, the gift and the trust that has been given to them for being fathers, and the confidence that they can do this well, and the influence that God has positioned them to have in every other relationship, in every other area in their life.